It's the only Bardstown I have. I didn't pay for it. Jake gave it to me a year and a half ago.
Oh, the KBS one?
Pour out of it.
That's probably the worst
What?
release ever from Bardstown.
Oh, Jake was just telling me how good it was.
I liked it.
I mean, that's how good Bardstown Distillery is.
Yeah. It's great.
But I gave it to you because I knew it was the shittiest one. And that's how I feel about our friendship.
I like how you bought me $100-some bottle for moving, and now you're saying that it's shitty, and even though you liked it.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters.
They just added to my thing. It's like the ones people like the most aren't even by them.
That's not true.
I would say the
That's not true at all.
Well known.
Let's go. Record.
Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm bitter.
And I'm Gold Eagle Jake. You're about to be bitter as hell after this episode.
Today we are talking about maybe our most controversial topic in the history of the podcast. Bardstown Bourbon Company. We're going to find out why Dan doesn't like it, as he's been
and why he's
vocal
wrong
about, I think, and why he's wrong. So I think Dan and I both have been there.
Jake's been there. Jake ours. Or Jake, Gold Eagle Jake's been there.
Yeah, Jake's been there. Dan and I went in 2021.
I think.
Or 2022?
No.
2021.
Yeah, I think it's been 2 years. I think it's been 2 years this Labor Day.
Yeah, and I liked it. It was a lot of fun. It's very contemporary and like modern in their distilling techniques and the way everything's designed.
The bar, the restaurant,
if you will.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what you call it. It's kind of like
West Coast.
Yeah, West Coast is a good way to put it. Almost techie, like
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, Silicon Valley kind of design elements going on there. When we were there, it was shortly after the distillery had been bought out by Pritzker Capital. For those that don't know, that is a hedge fund type thing owned by Illinois' Governor J.B. Pritzker's brother. You want to elaborate on that, Dan?
You're good. You're good so far. You said all you needed to say.
But I mean, at the time, it was, I think, maybe a month or so after the acquisition. And we mentioned it on the podcast,
after, yeah.
I think, because that was pretty big news. Bardstown is one of the biggest contract distillers in Kentucky, if not the country. I don't know what we're allowed to talk about, so I won't say some of the barrels we saw in there. But there's a lot of big.
If you saw it, you're allowed to talk about it.
Okay, so like Angel's Envy seems to be switching over to them. There's a lot of other companies that are using their stuff. I don't know how transparent they really are about what. Who they source to, but
last time I was there, they said they are distilling and creating about 65 different brands there, and they're only allowed to talk about 24 of them. So when you're going to a bigger company to set up a contract to distill, it's up to you if you want to have them disclose your brand or not. And a lot of the bigger guys, most of the time, will not want people to know that you're distilling for them. And a lot of the times those bigger guys are doing that because they need more product, but they are maxed out on their own still. So they might contract out some work while they're working on expanding at their own distillery. I think the plus side about saying, yeah, go ahead and let people know, what brand we are that you're distilling, is that's just more exposure for the brand. So a lot of the smaller brands will not care. And especially a distillery as good as Bardstown Bourbon Company, with all the technology they have, a smaller brand is going to, Dan, a smaller brand is going to want people to know that they're in good hands when they're drinking your bourbon, and it's from a reputable distillery that has the technology to do what they're doing.
Yeah, and like
Plus,
in their
Bardstown
gift shop.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Right, go ahead.
exactly. In their gift shop, they sell some of these other brands that they're distilling for. So it's just more exposure for a smaller brand.
Yeah, it is one of their, I guess, core like tenets is transparency. On all of their bottles, they do put the mash bill and the source, whether it's from Bardstown or sourced from elsewhere. I think if it's outside of Bardstown, they just put what state it's from. They don't say the actual distillery, but it is nice to see that. I know we talk a lot about transparency on this show, but it's.
I will say my bottle does not have the mash bill on it.
Oh, yours doesn't?
What bottle do you have?
Nope. The Founders.
What does it say on the breakdown?
It's just Tennessee. Whiskey distilled in Tennessee, produced by Bardstown. And it's 10-year Tennessee bourbon finished in 15 months in KBS stout barrels.
If Bardstown could tell you the mash bill, they would. The place that they got that bourbon from is probably not letting them disclose the mash bill. Or it was a blend and they don't know the exact mash bill.
Yeah. Just proving Jake's point wrong.
You can't do that. Argue against this. You can't argue against this.
They are Jake wrong.
They're the most
transparent bottle they've ever put out.
Most transparent distillery out there. Nobody breaks down the percentages of the blends in each mash bill in each of the blends, and how long exactly it was aged for and where it was from. No other distillery does that.
I didn't say they didn't. I just proved
the closest distillery to that is probably Barrel Craft, just listing all the states that the whiskey was aged in or is from. But yeah, no other distillery that I know is that transparent and open about sourcing and using their own whiskey. Very open about sourcing. They have a whole line called Discovery Series, which is all about discovering other whiskey.
They don't have that line anymore.
No, Fusion is the one they don't have anymore.
No, Fusion's discontinued. They're still doing Discovery.
Are they still doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they only stopped doing Fusion because they have their origins now.
Right. So the distillery started in 2016. I think they were producing their own whiskey ever since the start. A lot of that went to contract distilling to begin with. They've been releasing the Fusion and Discovery series, which over time has been more and more of their own product in it, along with whatever other stuff they're blending. Fusion stopped at number 10, I think, was the last release. I think last year, I think I'm right.
I think you're right on last year or the year before. It was within the last 2 years.
Yeah. So the like Jake said, the reason they stopped producing that was because they're ready to start releasing their own whiskey into the market under the Origin Series label. They have a bottled and bond wheated, a straight bourbon, and a rye. I've tried all three of them. I did not like either of the bourbons, but I am a big fan of the rye. That's what I'm drinking tonight. I don't know if you guys have opinions on those.
I've tried a couple different bourbon batches. I didn't think there was like anything majorly wrong with them. I wasn't a big fan of them, but I wouldn't put them ahead of like an Evan Williams or a Buffalo Trace or any other of the big brands, basically name brand label. And a lot of those are a lot cheaper than what the Bardstown is. It's not. I didn't find any major faults with it. I just wasn't blown away by it, and didn't think it was as good as stuff that I've had quite a bit in the past. Was my thought on the Origins, at least.
I mean, I agree with that. I'm not gonna sit here and say the Origins were amazing. I do think the rye is really good, but at the same time, like this is their first release of their own whiskey. It's 6 years old, so I'm not counting that stuff out yet. I'm ready to see what they're gonna put out in a year or two, especially because how much better their Fusion and Discovery series got as it went along. I think there was like 1 or 2 early batches of Discovery that were really, really good, and then it kind of fell back a little bit. But now the batches they're putting out of Discovery are absolutely insane. And I'm actually drinking Fusion #1 right now, which is very underwhelming, I think, compared to the newer batches. But this also has 42% 2-year Bardstown Bourbon Company juice and 18% 2-year Bardstown Bourbon Company juice blended with 11-year. So some really older age stuff with some underage stuff that probably wasn't really ready to go, but they just kind of wanted to show their first run of their own whiskey.
And that was the big difference. Was Fusion was always younger and more affordable. It was usually in that $60-some price range, I believe.
Yeah, right
where
around
the
60.
Discoveries were over 100 usually, 1 to 120, I think. Fusion was always usually under that a lot of stuff under 4 years, where I believe like a lot of the Discovery, almost everything was close to 10 or over 10 years old. My first introduction to Bardstown was Discovery, and I can't remember if it was 7 or 8 that I had. And I really liked that bottle, and I put it in our first ever March Dramness. I was a pretty big fan of it because it had a lot of 17-year in it as well. So I really liked that bottle. I bought the Fusion just because it was a lot cheaper, so I thought the Discovery is so good I want to try the Fusion out. Thought at that time the price, it was fine, but not worth the price. I would rather pay the $120 for the Discovery compared to the $60 for the Fusion. But I think that's really the only Bardstown I've had that I really enjoyed was that one Discovery series, which, part of my thing with Bardstown is a lot of the stuff people like wasn't even made by Bardstown. So that's one of my gripes with them. One of my many.
Yeah, I mean they're open about being blenders as much as they are distillers.
You got to tell where the whiskey comes from.
Yeah,
you have to tell on your bottle where it's produced or where it's made.
Yeah,
distilled.
Yeah, so I mean they're I think discounting them because their top product is mainly sourced, I think would be like saying Barrel is shitty because they don't produce anything.
No,
yeah, I don't know.
Though, but Barrel's not a distillery. Barrel's a blender, and Barrel goes to market as a blender.
Yeah, but why would you
distillery?
Like, props to the distillery for being able to do both, successfully blending whiskey from other distilleries and also distilling their own. Those are two very difficult things to do.
It is.
So I don't know.
The problem is they just don't have the money to have a blender and a master distiller. I don't think. I just don't think Bardstown has the money behind them to be able to hire both of them.
Yeah.
A
here's what's cool about that. He's definitely making a joke.
Here's what's cool. Here's an unlimited budget. Make a distillery. That's cool.
Unlimited budget. We talked about how when they first started, they started a lot of contract. Their ratio was actually 90% contract distilling, 10% their own whiskey. And they have their own whiskey now on the shelves across the country. So that 10% is enough to supply the country 90% contract distilling. That is absolutely insane. They're producing so much whiskey, and with the contract distilling, you get all the money up front. You don't have to wait for the barrels to age.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you're earning money every year. You're sitting on those barrels in your rickhouse. So money's not an issue, obviously, and whether they want to spend it or not, whatever. But I know the reason why they don't have a master blender that's dedicated to blending is because they let all their employees weigh in on all the blends. Every time they come out with a new Discover series or a new release, employees can submit their blend and they blind taste them and they kind of tweak them from there. So I think that's very cool, getting your employees hands-on and involved in creating the product. And they don't have, for how big of a company they are, they don't have many employees. It's kind of like everybody's hands-on. I think when I was there last, it was like 210 employees they said they had. I'm sure they have more now. But I think that's very cool to let everybody who's involved with the company put a real say into what the whiskey's going to taste like.
Yeah, and when we were there, that was one of the things I thought was the coolest aspect about them is how like lean they actually run, particularly at the distillery, like on site. I think they said there's like 2 people that actually run the entire like mashing room and the distillery itself, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I got to nerd out a little bit because they had like all these like computer monitoring like systems that show you exactly like which valves are switched on and like where things are being piped and like all that cool shit. So that was pretty neat.
You know why they can run so lean? Because everything's automated.
Yeah.
And Gold Eagle, Jake, if I remember correctly in previous episodes, when we talked, I think it was about whiskey as an investment. And you were talking about some of the older bottles where people were having to hand open and close valves, and there's this art and this craft and everything to distilling. And that's what you liked about some of these places. There are some places. That's not Bard. Like that's, I mean, when you have that much money, everything is fully automated. It is push a button on a computer and your mash is going. It's push this, pipes over to here and into the still, and it goes. So they're with the technology they have and the money they have behind them, it's a little bit easier to have lower employees when you can fully automate everything when you're not as hands-on with the mash and distilling process.
Yeah,
you got a good memory, Dan. I do respect distilleries that are all hands-on and moving all the gadgets and whatnot themselves to make a mash and distill and moving everything by hand. But I also said in the original Bardstown episode how cool it is that they have this technology and it's just a different way of doing things. And if you're going to have the technology, you might as well have the best of the best technology, which is what they have. And a lot of the other big distilleries, big example is Bullet, who just has like a room where you just press buttons and automate. They're nowhere near the capabilities that Bardstown Bourbon Company is and has to be able to switch to multiple mash bills, multiple grains, for over 60 different distilleries in the same day even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the difference in size, though, too, because Bardstown produces quite a bit more than they do.
Than Bullet?
Yeah. The Bardstown, I think, is the third or fourth highest producer of whiskey in the U.S. in terms of volume.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Because Buffalo's the biggest with 2 60-foot column stills, and Bardstown's got 2 40-foot column stills.
Yeah.
Which means they're doing about 20,000 gallons of whiskey a day that they're producing.
Yeah, it was something pretty standard.
Like I think it's Buffalo Trace, MGP, and then maybe Bardstown might be the third.
Yes, wasn't Heaven Hill 4th or 5th?
I don't think Heaven Hill's as big as Bardstown.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I mean, when we were there 2-ish years ago, were they on their like 6th brick house or 7th brick house? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But they had like 4 under construction when we were there, and they were planning on continuing to raise rick houses like every 3 months or something like that, like, which is absolutely wild. And they had no plans to stop building more, which is pretty crazy considering, one, how big their rick houses were, and just the amount of whiskey output must be insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Dan, what else don't you like about them?
But yeah, so before we get into it, this topic was suggested by a listener, Matt. Shout out to Matt again. He gave us a topic a couple weeks ago. So make sure you give us, some ideas if you're looking for something specific that you want us to talk about. We appreciate it. So Matt's exact ask was, he knows that Dan mentioned he doesn't like them, but he thinks they're releasing really good stuff under the Discovery and Origin labels and would like a deeper dive and any insight on what's coming next for them. So, Dan, why do you hate Bardstown?
So one of them right there is the Discovery Series stuff. With them being a distillery, I'd like to see them focus more on their own stuff than blending.
I think that's an
just
invalid argument. I'm sorry.
I also think as a distillery, like some of the people's favorite ones out there are not distilled by them.
Props to the distillery for being able to do both.
You like the Discovery
that's the one I like
series,
the most.
though.
That's the one I like the most, but it's not their distillery.
But you would rather that they stop producing the thing that you like the most about the distillery in favor of their own stuff.
Yeah, because I'm not going to buy their stuff anyways.
But
I'm not going to buy another Discovery.
I mean,
anyways.
I don't know. I thought that was the coolest idea for a distillery to come out with a label dedicated to discovering other distilleries.
Even at face value, just making it a premium blend is
I would have done it
and they got a lot of pushback in the beginning. A lot of people didn't want to buy it because it was so expensive, and now we get 12 bottles in and they're gone within 20 minutes.
Yeah, but that's with a lot of new bourbon, though.
No, it's kind of dying down a little bit.
Stuff that comes up. Oh, so then are you also going to admit that I was right when I said bourbon?
No, I brought that up for a reason. No, absolutely not. Bourbon did not peak.
Because I can send you the research project I did that I sent Jake that shows it.
No,
but that's another topic.
You're like really combative today.
Well, it's been a while. And I will say the same thing that Jake said when we found out that Pritzker money was heavily involved, that we were both done with Bardstown. One of us is true to our morals and ethics. The other one, not so much.
Hey,
I
man.
am drinking Bardstown tonight. It is a bottle that Jake bought me a year and a half ago before I moved. And if you're watching on YouTube, I've had one pour of this before tonight. This is how much is left of this bottle. This is you got me the Founders collaboration. Not a big fan of the Founders at all.
Which I said before the podcast is probably my least favorite Bardstown I've ever had.
And let's not hide the story here. You said that, which I thank you for saying that. Jake thought it was really good, and then he tried to pass it off that he bought it.
That shows how good of a distillery it
I
is.
thought your blend was good too.
But
you can't say that when Jake thought his blend was good. That's a blend off. Like that just
some people do like that Founders blend. It's finished. I think 15 months in a stout barrel. I mean that's a really long time.
Stout. It's got a very bitter finish on it. It's got a very long finish, which is nice, but it's not a flavor I like.
It's a stout heavy finish, so it's very off-putting to some people, but some people do actually really like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. People without taste, like
it's
Jake.
not for the Busch Light drinkers
right.
like Dan.
So Discovery Series is cool as hell, being able to discover other whiskeys and showing that a distillery knows how to blend, and the fact that they let all their employees get involved in suggest blends to be the next Discovery Series.
I will make a counterpoint on that though too, because all distilleries are blenders because you blend your batches.
Okay.
Oh
you're tasting different barrels.
I mean, it's a fair point, but all distilleries are not blending other whiskey. When you're, I mean, Dan, you know, like, all right, this rick house is gonna mesh well with the fourth floor of this rick house, and we put them together and we get a consistent blend. Like, bigger distilleries know what floor and what rick house they're gonna pull from to keep the blend consistent. To be able to pull in other whiskey that's not even your
giving
own,
Dan a little
taste
too much
it.
credit.
I mean, I hope he knows something if he was working at a distillery and their second distillery.
Can I also throw another counterpoint out here, though? Can I throw another counterpoint out here?
Mm-hmm.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your blend that you made for the blend off?
Are you asking me?
No,
specifically.
Yours Gold Eagle Jake. The one that me and Jake had the good ones. I don't ask the people that had good blends.
I thought it was
yours.
pretty good. I would say like 7 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10.
Okay. So you just have a lot of whiskey experience. You don't have any blending.
No, and I'm not gonna lie. Like I mean, I think I'm an okay blender, but I did kind of get lucky with that blend. Like I just thought of a couple things that might go well together, put them together, tasted it, and thought it tasted really good. So I went with it.
So it wasn't that hard. You just kind of thought of a couple of things
that
would taste good together. You mixed them.
My other blend that I created tasted completely awful, and I used much better whiskeys in that blend. I used 3 or 4 expensive whiskeys that I really, really like on their own, put them together, and it did not perform well at all.
Did I forget Jake R? Did he talk about ever making a second blend? Because all I heard was he did it last second.
I told everyone at the tasting
all right,
that I made 2 blends, and one of them was awful, and it was like all my favorite whiskeys, and then the second one just had some random, like the Trader Joe's one, and I was like, do this for fun, and that one ended up tasting really good.
So not knowing a ton, you were 50%, and one of the 50% gave you a 7.5 out of 10. Okay. No, keep going your point. Never mind. Sidetracked.
That's an awful argument.
So
that's an
clearly
awful
it is
argument.
I didn't ask you the question.
Good blend.
And
I didn't ask you the question, Jake.
And he attempted many times to put a blend together.
Yeah, well,
I had
know
like
how
10
Jake is.
iterations.
I know. Mm-hmm.
I would give my blend maybe a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I blended it the way I wanted it to.
There's a reason we know of more distillers than we know of blenders, because it's
that's true. Part of that is because like guys like Harlan Wheatley are well known. Then you have other people that you know really well just because their family's been in it for.
And I mean, I'm talking more like we know Barrel Craft, like they're probably the biggest and top blender in terms of like consistency and using other people's whiskey to create their brand. We know Dixon Deadman 2XO, but he's still not like a huge, worldwide name. Definitely not worldwide. Like maybe just with bourbon people in the U.S. really, but there's not a ton of other blending houses and blenders that come to mind where you say, oh yeah, I know if they're putting something out on the shelf, it's going to be good. And I think Bardstown is in that discussion with Barrel Craft as being one of the best blenders in the country, talking about not using their own whiskey with the Discovery Series.
But you also mentioned on the Discovery Series earlier tonight that some of them were good and some of them
did, but all the recent batches have been really good. And they didn't fall off. Like, none of them were bad. They were all really good. Some of them were just a little questionable on the $130 price point.
Yeah. Okay. I'll agree with you on that. Yeah, those are my big.
Listen,
big.
Here's the thing.
takeaways.
Anytime somebody shit talks Bardstown Bourbon Company, it's always because of Pritzker.
It seems like a pretty
good argument. I'm not a fan, but I'm also not a fan of politics, and I'm not going to let politics get in the way of really good whiskey.
Okay. I will say, like, one of the reasons why I'm not buying Bardstown is not just because of the Pritzker thing. I mean, it's kind of fun to hold that out. But there's enough stuff that I haven't liked about them, and there's enough other whiskey out there to try that I put them down farther on my list of things that I'm going to buy back again. I guess is kind of where I stand.
You're just salty.
There's so much out there to try. A little bit.
Well, we all know that.
It's hot in the distillery, so I'm sure there's still some sweat left on it. So,
but I mean,
a lot salty.
To give Dan a little bit of credit, I do think that price point wise, they are extremely high, just in general. Their Origin series is pretty reasonable, but all of their special releases are pretty expensive.
See,
the Discovery is pretty expensive, but I don't know if it's, some of them are worth it, some of them are not. I think that's like,
I completely agree that
the best way to,
maybe half the collabs are worth it, half of them aren't. Same thing with Discovery. If you look at every batch they put out, but they're not gouging anyone. I don't think they're charging that much because they think they can.
It's just a premium product.
It's a premium product. It's expensive to do these blends, especially when you're. I mean, most of their collaborations are with big name brands: Plantation Rum, Ferrand Cognac, Amrut, Prisoner. Like, those are big. Foursquare, Goose Island. Those are big name brands. It's not cheap to get those barrels from where they're getting them from, ship them over, and then those brands are going to want money for putting their logo on your bottle. So it's. I don't think it's cheap to do what they're doing. And questionable on price, yes, it can be questionable on price, whether the whiskey's good enough to pay that amount. But obviously people do, because most of those blends come and go really quick.
I just thought of something before I get basted on comments from people. I've actually bought a bottle of Bardstown since I said I wouldn't, and that was the bottle of Vercullen that I got when I was down at the distillery.
Yeah.
Disclaimer on that, I was very, very drunk already by the time I got that. You could only get the distillery, and I thought it was good. I brought it home, and I realized it wasn't. So if you are a loyal listener and notice that I've had Vercullen, yes, I bought that after I said I wouldn't buy from them again.
Mm-hmm.
But I was drunk, and I'm not allowed to be held accountable for things that happen when I'm drunk. Just want to speak my piece.
I did like that one a bit more than you did, though.
I think the distillery is amazing. I think it's a must-see when you're in Kentucky because it's going to be one of the more unique experiences you're going to have there. Go to facility things. If you like their whiskey, it's fine. It's not that I'm not going to disown you for it or anything. It's just it's not a preference for me. There's enough other stuff out there where for some of the prices on things, some of the taste that I've gotten out of it, I'm just going to go with other things. And if I don't put any money in anybody's pocket that has the last name of Pritzker, I'm happier for being that.
Here's something I think we can all.
The tasting.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that the tasting experience that they have there is great. It is really cool to get to walk through the distillery and the mash room, and see all the automation and stuff. The rick houses are super cool. They do a lot of neat stuff at the bar there. Every month the employees get to make up their own craft cocktail that's like featured for the month. They can utilize things from the garden that's on site to put into the cocktails and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really cool things that they do there. They have a full restaurant too, I think. So like we were joking that it's kind of like the millennial dream spot because it's like got brunch and shit and
their food is phenomenal. Food and the cocktails are really good.
Yeah, we got there at like 8 a.m., so we did not get to eat.
No, it was
restaurant,
still.
but-
I wasn't drunk by that early. We got there at 10 a.m. I had an old fashioned for breakfast. We did the tasting. We stole from a barrel, and then we went to Talbot's after that. And after that, it's kind of just up.
So what I was gonna say is I think something we can all agree on with Bardstown Bourbon Company is it's a good brand to try before you buy and to find in a bar because every release is very different, especially with the collaborations and the Discovery Series that's sourcing from different places. So it's a really good brand to try before you buy. Because you don't really know exactly what you're going to get until you taste it. It's not a consistent brand, and I don't think they're going for consistency outside of their Origin series.
Yeah, no, all the Discovery. I mean, that's the same thing with like Barrel. Their Discovery series is basically different batch numbers, like Barrel has. So,
the other part of Matt's question was, do we have any insight on what's coming next for them? I think almost certainly you can expect more collaboration releases. I'm trying to look up if there's anything that's like announced yet.
They don't really announce anything until right before it's about to hit.
Well, you can always cheat and go to the TTB's website and find new labels that they're putting out that are getting approved. There's trolls that do that, so.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hunt down the TTB's website right now, live on the show.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, yeah, my guess would be that they'll probably start increasing the age of the Origin series, probably in the next year or two, up to 7 year. Like I said, more collaborations, I'm sure. Maybe even an expansion of the Origins line.
So
I don't know what else they can release besides a weeded and a straight bourbon and a rye.
I'm gonna spill some beans right now. It's not 100% confirmed yet, but we all know HLP Systems, right? Because of their previous picks that they've done with us. I think the HLP Systems pick this year is going to be a Bardstown Rye, Origin Rye. There were 6 barrels allocated to Illinois, and I didn't even realize this until they offered us one of the barrels. But the Bardstown Origin Rye is finished in toasted cherry wood and toasted oak, where the staves alternate in the barrel. I mean, that's pretty cool. Nobody else is really doing any toasted cherry, especially the alternating staves outside of Foregate that I know of, and those bottles are $200.
Yeah, and they released this one a couple years ago. It's a rye, and this is a collab with the West Virginia Great Barrel Company. Yeah, it's an infrared toasted cherry oak barrels. This is absolutely phenomenal. So this was clearly the prototype for the Origin series finish. And it definitely comes through on the Origin series.
And the cool thing about the Origin series is it's 95.5 rye, but there's nowhere near the spice level that you would think with 95% rye. It's a very delicate type of rye. You get a little bit of spice, a little bit of mint, but you get a lot of toasted oak. You get a little bit of fruit from the cherry wood, but nothing overpowers anything. It's just a really well-balanced rye, which is why I'm extremely excited for the HLP Systems pick if they do end up picking a barrel, because the standard release is 96 proof, I think, and the barrel pick is going to be barrel proof.
Yeah.
for $10 more a bottle.
Yeah, I would
very
be excited for that,
surprised.
too.
I am very surprised Bardstown had the ingenuity to come up with a 95.5 rye. That's incredible. That's a great idea.
Nally, their master distiller, said it himself. Why try and fix what isn't broken? Go with what's good.
Mm-hmm.
Go with what you like.
It's already perfect. Why even pretend like you're going to improve on it?
Listen, there's other distilleries that mimic that 95.5 rye. Like,
I know. Jesus, calm down. Talking shit. God.
You just love stirring the pot. You're just.
Oh, I wouldn't.
I think you're out of arguments except for Pritzker.
I would
that's
never
your
antagonize anybody about anything. It's not my style. God. All right, so I guess that's. Any other questions from Matt on Bardstown?
No, that was it. Thanks again, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I
for
think
one of
Jake's
our
going to have a
spicier
coupon code for
episodes.
Bardstown, and I think the coupon code is going to be FUJB. Is that right
you're
on
giving
that?
me good ideas. You're giving me good ideas. You know what? Let's do one. Let's. Well, I need 5 characters minimum. Dan.
FUJB 24.
BMFUJ.
Oh yeah, it's got to start with BM. BM. FUJB. BMFUJB. All right, so we'll do 10% off Bardstown Origin Rye because we're talking about the rye. I think the rye is really good. That's a permanent SKU that you'll always be able to find. So BMFUJB 10% off Origin Rye will not count towards the HLP barrel pick if we end up picking it and getting bottles to sell, but just the standard Origin Rye, which I think when this episode airs, we're not going to have any inventory. We have 1 bottle on the shelf right now, but we will definitely be getting more next week, and the coupon code won't expire. So stay tuned, stay patient, and use that BMFUJB for 10% off Origin Rye.
Awesome. And where can
They
they
can go
buy
to
that online at?
goldeaglewine.com. They can download our app on the Apple App Store or the Android Store, whatever you call that crap.
I use that.
The Play
it's called
Store.
the Play Store, and I used it today
All right,
to buy a
very
bottle.
nice, very nice. And follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine. Follow us on Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits, and see what we get delivered every single day.
Nice. And Jake, where can people listen to us, watch us, all the fun stuff?
You can watch us on Spotify and YouTube. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Prime, anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Bourbon Matters and Facebook as well. Like, subscribe, share, leave comments. You can DM us. I swear I'll respond to you. Yeah, we like getting feedback, so it's always fun to get some questions from listeners.
All right. And
Thanks again,
this will
Matt.
be right before the 4th of July, so have a happy and safe 4th of July.
Yep.
Don't blow any fingers off. It makes it hard to grip onto a Glencairn if you're missing a couple of the middle fingers.
Yeah.
So make sure if you do
Make
blow one
yourself
off,
a nice
pinky's the
whiskey
best one.
smash. It's a good summer cocktail.
All right, guys. Well, I'm glad we all liked the fact that Bardstown's a piece of shit. Cheers.
I was gonna say I don't think we really accomplished.
No, we didn't. There was nothing. Dan, I think you're a fan of Bardstown secretly, and you don't want to admit it.
Yep. Yep. Huge fan. Huge fan. You caught me red-handed.
It's growing on you, though. Just admit that. It's growing on you, because you were a lot more adamant about hating on Bardstown last time we talked about it.
Growing on me like an STD.
You want to get rid of it, but you just can't.
I'd say it's kind of like chlamydia. You can get rid of it.
All right. See you guys next week. Cheers.
Cheers.